In case you've been living under a rock, just last week we got graced with 2 back-to-back Nintendo Directs. I was waiting all the beginning of this year to review this kind of stuff. If you'll remember, around about this time last year, the official corporate Nintendo account on Twitter revealed that they were actually going to really make a Nintendo Switch 2, but we really didn't get a whole lot of actual information at that point in time. Now we got everything to talk about, so I'm not even going to waste y'all's time. And off rip, Nintendo led with talking about the design for this thing. We had seen some leaks before, and most of them were actually really accurate. The system itself is larger and generally more comfortable for most people's hands. But even if it wasn't, not to worry. Just like the Switch 1, the Switch 2's Joy-Con 2s detach and can be used as individual controllers. The SL and SR buttons, basically the mini triggers, are now much larger, which makes games like multiplayer Mario Kart now more comfortable when playing this way. Now, of course, the system itself has some notable changes, like them finally adding a microphone and in-game voice chat, but that's stuff they really should have had a long time ago, so that shouldn't come as super surprising. Something interesting that they've decided to do is dial back the screen to LCD. But this screen supports 4K and even gets up to 1080p and 120 FPS. Not necessarily the most insane specs, but considering the jump from the Switch 1, this is pretty substantial. Just not really that revolutionary. I believe in the next few years they'll be releasing the OLED version of this. That said, it's not entirely necessary. This generation of LCD technology is actually brighter than the OLED of the current Nintendo Switches. What actually is revolutionary are the Joy-Cons themselves. These Joy-Con 2s possess some of the highest quality motion controls in modern gaming. And that makes sense, you know, Nintendo's 4 consoles and a handheld deep into perfecting motion controls, and they don't show any signs of stopping. Xbox tried with the Kinect, but when that failed, they just straight up gave up. PlayStation stuck with it for the Move, but then adapted and shifted to VR technology, which makes them Nintendo's closest real competitor. Now, that said, VR is in the fun novelty phase right now, so while I think it's a smart future investment for PlayStation, VR just doesn't have the big time backing for it yet. But Nintendo has worked so well with motion controls that they have confidently turned the Joy-Con 2s into effectively computer mice. And yes, I am emphasizing the motion controls because those work in combination with the small optical sensor on the side, with seemingly no LEDs to help infer movement. This is revolutionary. To put this in perspective, you can't even make your phone turn into a capable mouse on an accurate level like that. And phones have gyroscopes that are meant to interpret movement with help from satellites in space. I mean, don't quote me on that. There probably is some easy-to-miss phone app that can do something equivalent to that, but you get my point. See, that's significant because in addition to the accuracy that you would get with a standard computer mouse, the rotation is also an important factor, which can make quite a few games have more layers to them. Imagine a first-person shooter where you can lean around corners using the rotational movement of the Joy-Con with the aiming sensitivity of a mouse. And because this input isn't like a button, you run virtually no risk of wearing this out. This shit's even responsive enough to use in your lap. No, you don't need a fancy desk and mouse pad setup to take advantage of this technology. Nintendo thought about their audience of players, people who won't necessarily be near a desk, and they adapted to that. Add on to the fact that these computer mice like Joy-Cons have haptic feedback and rumble, features that most modern gaming mice now don't have. You get feedback with every click if you want, or you can just turn that off. I mean, it's actually quite insane. Both Joy-Con 2s will have the ability to be used like traditional mouses, with the triggers and bumpers acting like the left and right click respectively to whichever Joy-Con you're using. Now, on its own, that may not necessarily be enough to really seal the deal. Yeah, it's one thing if it's really only useful in menus or specific gimmick games, like one of the demo games Nintendo intends to use to really showcase what these things can do. But Nintendo had the balls to show the mouse controls being used competently to aim in Metroid Prime 4. This means a world of difference on an absolutely astronomical level. Nintendo Switch before was considered the worst console for competitive gaming, especially for shooters. The controller could never compete with mouse and keyboard. That's just a general thing, and the Switch's Joy-Cons just so happened to have the worst feel to them comparative to Xbox and PlayStation. They're thin, prone to breaking, and small. Switching aiming to a more user-friendly mouse structure all of a sudden shoots the Switch right past the other two consoles to compete with PC gaming. Now, of course, the Switch is still missing AD-AD strafing, which is rapidly pressing the A and D, effectively left and right on a WASD layout, to juke bullets and make yourself harder to hit, but the aim should be able to more than make up for that. So imagine what kind of an experience you'll have for games like Fortnite, Overwatch 2, Marvel Rivals, and for us Nintendo niggas, games like Splatoon. This is what I mean when I say this is revolutionary. Everyone's always reluctant to try motion controls for competitive gaming, even though it is legitimately console's closest attempt to reaching PC levels of accuracy. Nintendo said, fine, we'll show you motion controls a different way, and decided to come up with this idea. Now, of course, we've yet to truly see how something like Splatoon really works for this stuff. For all we know, they may not even allow that control scheme, or your sensitivity might not even be good for games like that. But I think Metroid Prime gives us some hope. Plus, there are games that definitely will use it, which is what I'm about to get into. Nintendo gave us some fairly in-depth trailers for Mario Kart World and the new Donkey Kong Bonanza. Mario Kart is always going to be Nintendo's go-to for launch titles for their consoles moving forward, and I think this particular game will show us everything we need to know in one nice package. At least with regard to graphical capabilities and the Switch 2's ability to allow for seamlessly large worlds with no loading screens or extreme frame rate issues, which unfortunately its predecessor was plagued with in the likes of Breath of the Wild and such. Yes, you heard me right. Mario Kart Tour will feature an open world where you can drive off the raceway and really just fuck off wherever you please. Plenty of scenic shots to take some nice pictures or just explore the areas you've always wanted to on some older tracks. In addition, you can also dress up your favorite characters in costumes and other cosmetics to really enrich the experience. But additionally, Mario Kart will retain the same qualities of Mario Kart 8, like the underwater and glider sections, which now seem to function more like planes, as well as I think some zero-gravity sections, although it was not emphasized nearly as much here. The new feature is rail riding. Not quite like rail grinding. I'm not sure if there's a lot of depth here, as they did not go over specifics of this mechanic, but I expect it to be something that can increase your speed with some kind of skill-based balancing of some sort. It also looks like you can trick multiple times while in the air, but that's not shown off too much either. Additionally, there are boat and snowmobile transformations for the karts, depending on the conditions. I'm sure they will largely follow the same control scheme of the karts, but maybe with some slippery or floaty physics to change things up a bit. They also brought back some fan-favorite items from the previous Mario Kart entries, like the Mega Mushroom, and are adding even more items like the Ice Flower and Hammer Bros hammers. And of course, new Mario Kart always means new characters, and they're really going off the rails with this one, no pun intended. The fucking cow from Moo Moo Meadows is now a playable character with a real bike. No, this is not a shitpost. Something else they emphasized is a day and night cycle, as well as a weather cycle, which will influence the conditions of the tracks you decide to drive on. And in a cup, not only are you driving in the races, but you're also responsible for driving to the next race. And of course, I could go on and on about other stuff like the new Knockout Tour mode, where it's essentially a giant elimination race, or how the free roam allows you to find new routes to win races easier, but I'd be here all day. Donkey Kong Bonanza, on the other hand, is completely different. Donkey Kong hasn't had a new 3D platform adventure title in 26 years! It's been since the Nintendo 64 when we last had a 3DK adventure. It's been so long, this nigga evolved the extra brain cells to put some damn pants on. Tell you what though, all that time has given Nintendo some inspiration because they've been cooking. And I know DK's been smelling. He's been fiending over that fresh-ass bonanza bread Nintendo's been letting bake for this release. Somehow, this game didn't get any major leaks, and it's been in development for all this time under wraps. That's fine with me though, because that allowed for DK to have one of the more explosive releases during this direct. Literally. This man is out here destroying the entire environment like he's out here playing Minecraft. Nigga just grabs chunks of the world and yeets them into mountains, casually causing craters and chasms in his chaos. I can't even begin to outline the unique ideas and innovations they made for this game. I mean, look, this nigga is surfing on the rocks. Only thing is, we have to wait to decipher what the story's gonna be about. But once we do, there's no doubt in my mind this will be a bestseller for the Switch 2. It's a nice refresher from Mario and Zelda. Then they went on to give us a teaser for Masahiro Sakurai's next big game. Kirby Air Riders 2? Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Kirby Air Riders was Kirby's stab at a racing game, and it handles very differently to Mario Kart, and is actually more akin to something like Sonic Riders. There are some stars, or boards, that can really change up how you race tremendously. This is definitely going to be one of those special gemstones among the other racing games that I think a lot of people will find fresh and unique. About halfway through, they also announced a Hyrule Warriors equivalent for Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, where Zelda is your main perspective. We get to see just exactly how bad Rauru and the OG sages got hoed by Ganondorf at almost peak power. I'm sure featuring some alternate timeline where Zelda and co win the war, just like how Age of Calamity showed its alternate timeline. Although, I think that means Zelda would be left in the past, alone with a busted Master Sword, but I digress. Nintendo Switch Online is also getting upgraded, finally adding GameCube classics like Wind Waker and F-Zero GX. To this day, F-Zero GX is the fastest racing game I've ever seen, and it's absolutely awesome to see brought to modern hardware without needing to be emulated. Of course, it's just a matter of time before the fans start demanding Smash Melee to be playable here, and especially considering they're releasing a brand new GameCube controller to go along with this announcement, this may be the new way we'll be able to play official Smash Bros. Tournaments. That is, if Nintendo wills it. But of course, it's not all about the first-party games that interest Nintendo fans. Nintendo still needs the third-party games to survive. And Nintendo came out the gate swinging. Their first major third-party game announcement was for Elden Ring. Elden Ring on the go with mouse controls is already an insane thing to think about. To believe a game of that size can run smoothly on a Nintendo console while playing somewhere other than home is fantastic. Just, cool it when you rage, because you don't want to accidentally end up throwing your Nintendo Switch into the wall thinking it was just a controller. I promise you nobody is paying for another Nintendo Switch 2 for you. Hades 2 followed right after with their announcement, although this was to be expected. Hades has the feel of a Nintendo game you can just pick up and play, so seeing it make the transition to the Switch 2 will only mean a better looking experience. Of course, Capcom had to come on through and bring Street Fighter into the mix here. Now you can parry, drive rush, and get your ass thoroughly handed to you in the backseat of your mom's car. Of course, the game will also be playable with the Joy-Cons turned to the side, so that may make for some really fun and interesting on-the-go mini-tournaments between you and your friends. They're releasing two versions too, one as the standard version and the other containing all the added characters since the game's release, totaling 26 altogether. Something crazy that they're adding to sweeten the deal are amiibos and amiibo cards to go alongside the release of the Switch 2. Luke, Jamie, and Kimberly are all getting official amiibos, which I think sets a precedent for the future of amiibo. I'd love to see a world where indie games can get their foot in the door for some of that amiibo action a little more easily. The return of amiibo cards is nice, although I think I only own maybe 2 of them at max. This would be a great opportunity for them to really go all out and make them look like collector's items. They also gave us Daemon X Machina, Titanic Shion, another game that will really test the limits of how well the Switch will handle so many assets and photorealism, alongside an actually interesting story and gameplay. Split Fiction is also making the rounds. Considering how absolutely awesome this game is on PlayStation, getting that privilege to play on the go and side by side, hopefully without having to pay for an extra controller, is simply awesome. If it turns out that it can't work without at least 2 Joy-Cons per player, well, I actually didn't think that far. EA, ever eager to get their games onto the Switch, have finally announced Madden and FC coming to the Switch 2, which is huge because the Switch doesn't really have any American football games, so sports fans can look forward to that. Another absolutely massive game, Hogwarts Legacy, is also coming through. It was a little bit of a letdown knowing the first Switch couldn't really handle the effects and environment of Hogwarts Legacy when it first came out. So now you get that opportunity to really take advantage of the fact that you can just pick up missions and side quests whenever you have a free moment, instead of having to wait for the whole day to go by just to go home at night after work and realize the side quest will take you quite some time to complete. Plus, the mouse controls will be taken into consideration when playing this one, so you'll get even more dexterity when you fling muggles around like ragdolls. Very excited about this one. Tony Hawk brings the heat with Pro Skater 3 and 4. The Switch is perhaps the ultimate dream console for skaters, considering it's portable and makes resting at the skate park or on the train ride home so much more fun. Just a quick pop out of the dock and shove it into the bag and bingo, you're good to go. Bringing that feeling of the PS4-like graphical capabilities to the streets and sidewalks absolutely makes this a must-have. It's like the ultimate gaming where you're not supposed to experience. Speaking of, these streets ain't safe when the ultimate bald nigga, Mr. Clean's shiniest headed op, Hitman, snipes his way onto the Switch 2, bringing not just a collection of world-class stages and puzzles, but also dragging Agent 007 alongside him. James Bond is expecting an upcoming game from the same studio with the game's dev name, Project 007. Bravely Default Flying Fairy is also getting its remaster on the Switch 2, which will essentially make it feel more high quality, as well as probably showing off those mouse controls a bit more for inventory and battle navigation. Nothing too crazy, but still welcome. The goofy-ass world of Yakuza is also bringing its crazy adventures to the Switch 2 as well. Finally, I can take these dumb-ass gang antics with me wherever I go. Yakuza 0 Director's Cut is going to be quite the sight to see over someone's shoulder on the bus ride home. Deltarune has absolutely everyone rooting for it, and I'm sure now with these mouse controls, things are going to get real interesting. Now you have no excuses. Sam's finna run your pockets even while you're laying in bed, so you better keep that determination high. Borderlands 4 will bring the scrap meat to you, so you can finally have an excuse to absolutely nuke niggas wherever you go. Insane thought. Imagine beating the game midway through a flight. I'm not even sure if you'd be satisfied, but at least you'll have an entertaining time on said flight. Civilization 7 on the go with mouse controls sounds like a dream. Civilization to me has always seemed like it lends itself well to some kind of portability, so having that luxury alongside the mouse controls will make for a tight and intuitive experience, I'm sure. Alongside the other sports games, NBA and WWE are making their way to the Switch 2 also. So after you get fouled to hell and back at the rec center or at your local YMCA, you can at least take a break on the bleachers and cross the fuck out of someone on the virtual court. Here we get our first unique game for the Switch 2, a 4-player survival game by the name of Survival Kids. Judging by the look of the game, it does seem fun, just not necessarily anything that would be super unique for the Switch 2, although I may be overlooking some things. Now, again, I did say I think this game will be fun. I personally get reminded of Raft when looking at this one, so that's at least generally a good sign. Enter the Gungeon 2 is also getting a Switch 2 release. Loved the concept for Enter the Gungeon 1, but I'd be lying to say I know a whole lot about this one. Even so, looks like it will run well on the Switch 2, especially considering how many entities and particles this thing is jam-packed with. A true test of some of the Switch 2's rendering capabilities. Starseeker brings that survival aspect and takes it to space. It's another upcoming game that's completely new, and the atmosphere has caught my attention. Maybe we'll focus on it sometime later on the channel. The next absolute haymaker is Cyberpunk 2077. These absolute mad lads actually did it. Cyberpunk on the go will definitely be an experience to behold. I never would have imagined being able to take an experience like Cyberpunk outside and into the real world. This will be the perfect thing to occupy your time on those real long interstate train rides or road trips during summer vacation. Like, damn, you can actually blow a nigga's brains out, wife or husband your favorite cyber gonks, and experience Keanu schizophrenia all on your road trip to the beach this year. And even still drive around with the latest supercars blasting electro-punk rave music at the maximum volume your Switch 2 can handle. This is an absolutely massive win for the Switch 2 and really goes to show how impressive this system is. Bonus points for the mouse controls, which will mean you'll never miss your shots. Your ultra-high damage Sandevistan stealth builds with knives as your primary weapon will become absolutely insane on the go like that. Just bonkers. And another heavy hitter, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade will also be coming to the Switch 2, bringing a premium experience with the premium luxury of playing this masterpiece anywhere you want. Omni-slash to your heart's content, because not even the commute to work can stop you. Unless, of course, you have to drive. No gaming and driving. They also gave us a speed round where they just casually dropped, Hollow Knight Silksong, which literally broke the chat. The most highly anticipated DLC for a game in the past several years is not only finally getting released, but it's being released on the brand new console, which will be able to run it at the highest graphics settings and on the go. This is huge for Hollow Knight fans, and I couldn't be more excited, giving me more reasons to finally pick up Hollow Knight. The rapid fire round went on to continue to show us all the many bangers and charming adventures in store for this console, and I was grinning ear to ear looking at every single thing they threw up on screen. And on top of that, From Software, the developers of Elden Ring, are also bringing us the Duskbloods, a Switch 2 exclusive game with elements like Elden Ring, where they take advantage of all the features specific to the Nintendo Switch 2? Surely all this can't be packaged nice, neatly with a nice bow on top and sold to us for just $450, right? Right? I just had to fucking speak. God bless America. The absolutely massive caveat to all of this comes down to several real-world factors. One, Nintendo is still a for-profit business. While the pricing for their console and Pro Controller are reasonable for what we're given at $450 and $80 respectively, as well as an extra $50 if you value their new camera for Nintendo FaceTiming while playing your game, which is cute at best in my opinion, Nintendo is seriously considering charging let me calm down for this. $80 for some of their first-party games. An all-new industry high by $20, absolutely skyrocketing the value of games as a casual activity. I know that article states $90 for a physical release. That was later found to not be entirely true of all expected games, so this may be a one-off thing for Mario Kart World. Additionally, some games they plan to optimize for the Nintendo Switch 2 you will need to pay extra for, like the updated versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Granted, they have essentially made these games more optimized for the Switch 2, but this reads very confusing to me, especially when they announced the Game Share service, which is basically a way to give your homies a 2-week trial of your full game. It's very strange to see that generous demo window alongside the extreme prices. It makes me wonder what Nintendo's angle is here. Are they trying to compensate for the cost of the Switch 2 with these first full games? By all means, the first few months to year of this console's release are going to be the most lucrative time for them to make their return on their investment, but I guess releasing these side by side seems a little strange from a business perspective. 2, America, which is pretty important considering I'm American and a lot of my audience is American, is currently going through a tariff crisis. Listen, I'm not one to talk much about politics, but this time it directly is getting in the way of gaming. Our American president intends to make imported consoles more difficult to obtain, charging other countries quite a pretty penny to have their consoles imported to American soil, such that Nintendo's Switch 2 prices will vary in Japan, costing the same as ours should for a fully region unlocked Switch at $450, or $330 for a Japanese-only version. The idea that the Switch 2 could have been close to $100 cheaper had Nintendo not had to fork out money to even import these systems is crazy. But what's worse is that apparently the tariffs are so scary that Nintendo is delaying the pre-order date in our country alone. This will inevitably make getting the consoles to the country, and by proxy the stores, way more difficult. And it's especially stressful on game store workers like me to try to predict and keep Nintendo customers happy and informed on how many we'll be receiving, as well as how much they will cost and when we can expect to see games and features come across the Pacific. It's tough out here. This ripple effect literally affects everyone, even loosely involved with gaming. Nintendo, PlayStation, Atari, Capcom, and a bunch of other non-American developers will be impacted by tariffs like this, and that jeopardizes the entire gaming industry. PlayStation's already cost an arm and a leg, but the potential that these tariffs have to upscale that to a mortgage with a potentially multi-month long setback really makes gaming look like it's only accessible to the elites who have too much money to know what to do with. In the case of the Switch 2, it becomes an even bigger pill to swallow, knowing that some common wants for an upgraded Switch haven't been implemented or even considered. Supposedly, the new Joy-Cons won't even have upgraded joysticks to prevent drifting. Extra love and care implementations like background music for the eShop, or home menu themes and background music for those menu themes will still be absent. A lot of quality of life charm and character, like Mario characters downloading and installing the information onto your console, also won't be included. We don't even know if the triggers on the Pro Controller will come with any other cutting-edge features like the haptic feedback pistons on the PlayStation DualSense triggers, for example. All of these could maybe be forgiven if we were sure that $450 is the set-in-stone price, but if the tariffs affect the Switch's price so much such that they have to raise the console price to some outlandish degree, those missing extra premium features are going to become deal breakers real quick, especially for the Joy-Con 2s. For American viewers, my best advice is to be vocal about this shit and then find a god and pray, because these tariffs are taking a toll on us directly, costing us more money out of our pockets. Nintendo could very easily raise the price of these to upwards of half a G, and I don't think any of us really want that. So now we find ourselves at the question of the month, or I guess the question of the next 2 months. Is the Nintendo Switch 2 worth it? In my wholehearted opinion, without any filter, as a Nintendo nigga, no, not at all. Or at least not right now. Considering all that price stuff, the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have to present me with its alternate designs, like for Splatoon 4 or the next Animal Crossing. I mean, let's be honest here, most of us will eventually get a Switch 2. This is pretty cutting edge technology, especially if you value game optimization, portability, and next level motion controls and controller intuitiveness. Plus, the first party games Nintendo always makes sure to put out on their systems will obviously be the main draw. Thing is, if this system ends up getting hiked up to $500 or, God forbid, $600 here in the US, on top of the games being potentially upwards of over $110 just to combat the impact of the tariffs, that's absolutely going to throw a monkey wrench in the entire selling point of the system in America, especially considering the price of eggs and milk nowadays. I think the smartest thing for Nintendo to do is make the system itself on par with something like the PlayStation 5, somewhere around the $500 range, and then keep the games the same as their original price. You have to buy the system before you can play the game, and if the system is going to be the toughest pill to swallow while keeping everything else around or the same price, then I think Nintendo will have an easier time retaining their audience here in the States. But that's just my 2 cents. Well, what an interesting era we live in to see Nintendo put in such a rough position like that. Speak with your wallets. These things are powerful. These next 6 months to a year are going to be extremely important for the gaming space, especially here in America, as we're going to be affected pretty much equally across the whole board. We need to simply be conscious of what we are investing in from the get-go. Remember, this stuff also has the potential to affect everything else outside of the States, whether or not it's the pricing of the Nintendo Switch, or if other countries decide that they somehow are connected to the tariffs in any way, shape, or form. The last thing we need are other countries taking inspiration from American policies right now and trying to hike prices up universally. We don't want to be paying premiums for games. But with that said, what are your thoughts on this whole debacle? That's what the comments are for. Personally, despite what the tariffs are going to do, I mean, if the PlayStation 5 Pro can sell, I'm pretty sure the Switch 2 will probably sell. Like I said, I'm going to be waiting for like the special editions of these consoles to come out, like the Splatoon 4 or Animal Crossing or Zelda version. So I'm not picking it up right away. I'm not pre-ordering it right away. And I work in a game store with an employee discount. That goes to show just how bad this shit is getting. Either way, that's all I got. I'm gone.